Hey, hello class. Here we are outside of our beautiful campus, a beautiful day today. And I'm here with my colleague friend, Professor Jacobo. And we both wanted to come in and pitch in on your discussion that deals with race. As you read the chapter of Raymond Paredes, The Origins of Anti-Mexican Sentiments. But I wanted to have a talk with Professor Jacobo, and then also you guys can reflect on our comments.
Thank you. I hope everyone's doing well. It's a very important chapter. I think it frames, in many ways, the entire semester when it comes to the construction, if you will, of race and the other. And Raimundo Paredes talks about the origins of anti-Mexican sentiment, beginning in Europe, of course, coming across to this continent, and being part of the early American experience, if you will. And so he talks particularly about, again, racism and also religious intolerance. But I think that part of our question, really, you students as scholars that you are, all of us as intellectuals, if you will, is not just the importance of that historically, but to a great extent, what impact did that have across time to the present, if you will. You know, it's interesting because currently there are some states in the United States that are trying to, if you will, ban or revise history to not include the issue of race when it comes to the early years of the American experience. And so you might want to reflect also on that, and not just, again, the early anti-Mexican sentiment when it comes to anti-Catholicism or anti-Spanish sentiment, but also what's the long impact, again, of that sort of colonial mentality, if you will. I think it's important.
That is a good point, because if you think about in the 1700s, you have all these, which is pseudoscience, all these scientists who came up with the idea of race. Because as you know, race was created. It's a made-up fake news, if you want to call it that way, because it doesn't have any, in terms of biology, really it's only one race, it's the human race. But if we go back to when you're reading Raymond Paredes, we have all these people coming up with the idea of race. When we think about race in the U.S., then we think about blacks, we think about Asians, and we think about Native Americans. Now, when we talk about our Latinx or Mexican Americans, that's more of ethnicity. But yeah, those labels unfortunately are here. And then, so if we go back to the reading 1600s, 1700s, the scientists were actually comparing the skulls of different races, in quote, and based on that idea, they thought that people were inferior or superior. And even we have that today. When we look at someone, we tend to judge people by their phenotype. And phenotype, I mean by their physical features.
You know, it's interesting because we do often get confused, the ideas of race and ethnicity and culture. For example, our students might be surprised, and eventually they're going to learn this when we discuss the 1930s, that the Mexican origin people are considered to be of the white race, if you will. Again, in my birth certificate from the 1960s says that I'm white. Now, obviously, then you have the ethnicity, right? That is Mexican American type of thing. So a lot of those things have been created historically and very often been used to separate, segregate, instead of bring people together. So there's, again, the importance of us as scholars to not just look at the history of some of these, if you will, periods and terms and collisions, but what is the long-term impact to even our contemporary society in our country, in the United States. And it's a comfortable issue. We know that it's uncomfortable to talk about racism, religious intolerance, persecution. At the same time, again, I repeat, as scholars that we are, it is important for us to have these discussions.
Well, and as we move forward in this class, you're going to learn in some units. For example, in the Lemon Grove incident, it's going to come up in a couple of weeks from now. Once again, the concept of redefining Mexicans with the Bliss Bill.
Right.
And so this is something that is going to stay with us for a long, long time. So I want you to be mindful that race is going to come back and forth. As we analyze court cases, for example, when we get to Sylvia Mendez in Westminster, once again, the segregation of Mexican Americans based on what? Based on race too. So,
yeah, you make an excellent point. Again, and we'll get to that later on, how in the 1930s in California, there was an attempt to redefine Mexicans as Indians and not white to legally segregate them. Ironically, now in the Second World War in Texas, the opposite happened. They wanted to make sure the Mexicans were labeled as white in order to be able to get the Bracero program to work in Texas. So again, that's what we said earlier. It's a difficult chapter to read. We know that, but it does frame the entire semester when it comes to the issue of race and cultural collision. So
Yeah.
hopefully you enjoy it.
All right. Take care. And here we are to shine light to this difficult questions, perhaps?
Yeah.
All right. Well, take
Take
care.
care of yourselves.